Town's outside.
Yes. That's a go. That's all right. Okay. Thank you, Marjorie. Okay. Hi, Robin. We were gonna see each other this weekend. I'll let you know. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember him. Steve Lee, Herman's son, and I'm his wife, Kara. Yes, so sorry.
You've been following on Sharon Bridge.
I'm
Yeah,
Karen
he's,
Bridge.
yeah.
What a
What a
fight
fight.
for 8 years.
Yes.
How are you doing? And the kids? Do they both still live at home?
Yeah.
I don't think I've
Here, and I don't know where
Again, our
And you should see
condolences.
Tom.
It's Tom? I don't think I recognize him.
This is Debbie, his wife.
Oh, hi
Debbie.
Debbie.
Debbie,
Gail.
I
Yeah, I recognize it.
And I remembered your name.
I could-
Steve. One of my favorite colors.
Where's Tom?
He's out there somewhere.
Oh,
But this is our son,
hi Patrick. Gail Lee, cousin of sorts. I don't know how that works. This is your baby? Oh my gosh. Yeah, he was in for a while, right? If I'm remembering right? Yeah. Thank goodness you-
Yes, yes,
Good. Married, grandkids, the whole thing. The youngest is 13 and the rest are 14, couple twins and 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they all live in Niles. And then that they've all been in the same schools together the whole time. No, it doesn't. Keep it really gentle.
The golf brigade. It's a very dangerous sport. No,
Nothing that exciting.
just stepped up.
Have you been following his Curing Bridge entries?
Where do you guys live? Yeah.
You're in Tennessee?
Yeah, they do. You like it?
you have to fly to each other and drive. Also, it's new construction. That's okay.
Are you encouraging people to come in before they start paying attention?
Actually,
To have property taxes.
Sure. It gets pretty loud out there, so. Yeah, yeah,
Is Kevin here? He always had mental health issues. Yeah.
She's been in here. So, yeah, but I don't talk to her. Let's do it'll be, three speakers.
doesn't matter, yeah, it's just a cut.
Or he'd just show up at our house. Maybe lived in the
My son.
open the door, I don't like. It's too hard to get in. Didn't want to. Back issue. Yeah, please let him know we're here.
During the next week. And, what about?
She's, no. Different.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask everybody to please put your cell phones to silent mode at this time so they don't go off during the service? Family Hampshire wants to thank everybody that's here today, either here in the sanctuary. Last I looked, there's 14 devices also online from around the world. This funeral service is going to be conducted by Rabbi Rachel Weiss and Cantor Howard Friedman.
Good morning, everybody. So we are here together in this place, in this sacred sanctuary, most importantly surrounded with all of you filling this room, surrounding Nancy Ellen and Maddie and Jake and all of Bob's family, to remember Bob Lee and to acknowledge that he has died. Both through being here in our grief and being here in our memories, as these wonderful photos are showing us through all different phases and stages of his life that Maddie put together. We are here first and foremost to acknowledge and to be together in this moment, because that is one of the most important and sacred and holy things that we do, which is to come together and show up and to be here for each other. We are a people of symbols, and in the Jewish community, one of the outward symbols that we wear when we've experienced a death or a loss in our families is to tear either a piece of clothing or to tear a black ribbon as an outward symbol of the very real inward tear that is taking place inside our hearts. So I'm going to invite those wearing black career ribbons, Nancy Ellen and Maddie and Jake and Bob's brother Tom, to stand as we perform this ritual of tearing of Kriya. This ribbon as a way to it's a reluctant.
Yeah. Thank you.
And it's an outward way to show that there's a part inside that's broken. And we say, Adonai Dayan Ha'amet, blessed is the one who knows about the truths of the world, perhaps mysterious and unknown to us, but knows how to surround all of us with what has broken us. We say these words, Baruch Atah Adonai, blessed are you, HaKarov L'Nishbarei Lev, the one who is close to those whose hearts are broken, but et Dacheruach Yoshia, and brings tender, loving care and sustenance to all of those who are suffering. We are here today, this morning, to remember and begin to tell the story of Bob Lee, the son of Carl and Jean Baker Lee, the brother of Thomas and brother-in-law of Debbie, and the brother of Kevin, the husband of 26 years ago of Nancy Ellen Zussman, and the father of Jake and Maddie. We remember him as a friend and community member and co-worker, a concert goer and music lover, a spreadsheet maker and detail planner, a dog lover, a pool shark, and a car lover. And for 8 years, a survivor of stage 4 lung cancer, until his body could not sustain him to survive any longer. What we do at a funeral service is gather in our grief together to acknowledge first and foremost this tremendous loss, which happened more quickly than we were anticipating. When the doctors and the hospice staff were imagining many more weeks, it was really only a couple of days. And so this is our opportunity at this ritual to gather in reality, to start to tell Bob's story and to start to remember together. So we turn to a part of our liturgy from the book of Kohelet, the book that we read during Sukkot time that reminds us that everything has a beginning and an end, and that we are part of something that is so much larger. And the ocean, while filled with many, many little drops, always returns wave after wave and is never full and never saturated and big enough to hold us all.
דור הולך ודור בא, והארץ לעולם עמדת. ויזרח השמש ובא השמש, ואל מקומו שואף, זורחו שום. הולך אל דרום, וסובב אל צפון. סובב, סובב הולך הרוח, וסביבתיו שלווה רוח. כל הנחלים הולכים אל הים, והים איננו מענה, אין מקום. שהנחלים הולכים שם, הם שבים ללכת.
One generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and sets and glides back to where it rises again. Southward blowing, turning northward, ever turning, blows the wind. On its rounds it returns. All streams flow into the sea, but the sea is never full. To the place from which they flow, as do we all, back again. This morning we will begin to tell Bob's story, begin to hear memories and ways of remembering him. It is an opening. It is not the only time we will ever talk about Bob. Rather, this is what we will do and carry with us for the rest of the time that we will be telling stories, which is to continue to tell his stories as they become part of ours. We'll begin by hearing from three of Bob's dearest friends. First from Kevin Van Meter, then from Steve Tettiner, and then from Michael Eisenberg. We invite Kevin first.
Yesterday, my daughter celebrated her 41st birthday, which means about 41 years ago today, my wife and I were discussing some of the details about raising her first child. We chose Bob to be her godfather. A few years later, my son was born and we named him Robert. Bob was much more than a friend to me. And like all of you, I'm going to miss him dearly. Bob was intensely loyal to those he cared for. While he never shared things that were told him confidentially, he frequently spoke about the concerns he had for those around him. If you were his friend or his loved one, he was trying to think of ways to help you. This was never more in evidence than when he was talking about Nancy, Ellen, Maddie, or Jake. He loved his family. He loved being a husband and a father. Anyone who spent much time with Bob also knows he had a very analytical way of looking at the world and the world's problems. When arguing a solution to a problem, you could count on Bob having a spreadsheet or a handwritten list to support his argument. And if you ever needed to borrow a pen, you knew Bob had one in his pocket. Bob had a very dry sense of humor. On more than one occasion, when I'd be in the middle of trying to fix a problem, it would usually go wrong, leaving me to look very silly. And Bob would comment something along the lines of, well, now we know how not to. Bob also had jokes he kept for the most part to himself. He loved ringtones. And he had specific ringtones for a lot of us. As far as I know, none of them were malicious, That wouldn't be Bob's way. But they were little movie quotes, excerpts from speeches or news stories that reminded him of the person calling and put a little smile on his face. When he found a new one, he'd share it with me, but he'd never tell me who it was for. And I don't think I ever found out what mine was. Bob loved music, saving the ticket stubs from concerts he'd gone to, and creating a giant display piece of all of them that hung proudly in his dining room. It'll surprise none of you to know that he also kept spreadsheets and pivot tables that allowed him to sort the information regarding those concerts. And in many cases, he had the complete playlist of the performances he had attended. The thing I admired most about Bob, though, was his tenacity. Shortly after he received his initial diagnosis, we spoke about the treatment to come and the uncertainty that lay ahead of him. I told him I thought he was uniquely prepared for the fight that lay ahead of him, and he asked why. And I reminded him of some of the things we used to do as kids, one of which was play tennis. Bob and I were very well matched by being equally poor at dating tennis. But that didn't stop us from competing, and usually there was a wager on the line as well. And I would always try to win the match with one decisive blow on every shot, hitting it harder and harder, and trying to place it in places he couldn't return it. And he just put himself in the best spot he could to return everything I hit, and return it waiting for the mistake that was ultimately going to happen. About 75% of the time, Bob would beat me. Bob lived his life the way he played tennis. He fought against his cancer courageously and analytically. He was actively involved in his treatment. He immersed himself in his friends, participated in activities he enjoyed, and traveled the world with the love of his life, Nancy Ellen. Long after the grief of his lost fades, I know still remember his caring, his thoughtfulness, his laugh, and his incredible friendship. Thank you.
How do you say goodbye to your best friend of 50 years? I tried to do it in person, but Bobby died while I was driving from Aurora to Skokie. He usually had really good timing. I've been told that everyone else called him Bob, but to me, reflecting back on all those years, he will always be Bobby. I knew that our last conversation would be much different from the very first time we met. I just moved to Aurora, and Bobby did not go to Hebrew school on the first day of our bar mitzvah year. Rabbi Agers knew that Bobby and I went to the same junior high, and he told me to tell Bobby to show up to the next class. That was all fine and good, but I had not yet met him. At school the next day, someone pointed him out to me, and I said, the rabbi said you better come to Hebrew school. Nice first introduction. Not a real meet cute, but we still became fast friends. I will never forget the first time that we had lunch together. The hot dog came with mustard, and he was less than happy. His finicky eating never really changed. He just learned to live with his taste buds. Although, he always got my mom to make him lasagna, and I don't even like lasagna. We spent a lot of time together over the next 5 years through high school. We both worked for my dad at the carpet store, as did Kevin on occasion. And Bobby was the perfect buffer between my father and I. Bobby could put up with my dad's slow and meticulous ways, and he always carried a pen, which made my father so happy. We spent a lot of time in high school weekends at BBYO events, at conventions, dances, visiting friends, or hosting events in Aurora. The bagel sales were always one of our favorites. I'd sleep over at his house, and we'd leave at 5 in the morning to go to Kaufman's in Skokie. How funny that he ended up living near there for so many years. It was always an adventure. While I drove with hundreds of dozens of bagels in the van, Bobby's job was to cut our bagels and spread lots of cream cheese on mine. He did not want to touch the cream cheese. And once he even bought surgical gloves to wear. Neither of us were great with the ladies at that time, so many nights were spent at Gala West playing pool, Feldot's Plateau at the batting cages and the driving ranges. We worked for my dad a lot, and last week we talked about how much money we would have had if we had not played pinball and video games every lunch, or taken an afternoon break from work every day for Dairy Queen. Everyone knows that Bobby loved music, but not that many people know that his first piano was a paper drawing on the floor in his living room. Tommy's nodding. His dad was not prepared to buy a piano until Bobby could prove that he was serious about learning to play. He'd practice on that piece of paper. It's just another example of his dedication, diligence, commitment, and the willingness to do whatever it took to accomplish his goals. Everything that Bobby did, he did 100%. There was never a half-assed effort. Golf, concerts, pool, work. He did not know how to do something if he was not all in. His parents were great, and we spent a lot of time at the Lee House. Gene, Carl, Tom, and Kevin always made me feel welcome, although his brothers were to razz Bobby and me. His mom died way too soon, right after our high school graduation. People much wiser than I have said that Mrs. Lee willed herself to see Bobby graduate from high school. She died days later. Bobby's love for concerts is legendary. And if you've been to his house, you've seen every ticket to every concert that he ever attended. I'm proud to say that the very first ticket was August 19, 1978, at Summer Jam in Comiskey Park. We saw the Eagles, the Steve Miller Band, and Pablo Cruz. It was a day that I will never forget. For years, we would quiz each other about the day's events to make sure we did not forget anything. Bobby was always as sharp as a tack. After he and Nancy Ellen saw U2 at the Sphere, he called me and said, "You have to see them, it is amazing." This was in spite of the fact that he knew I do not like U2. He was simply moved by the experience and wanted me to be moved as well. There are probably many people here today who've been on the receiving end of an email from Bobby detailing some concert with a simple warning. As always, if you say every you are in and can't make it, the ticket is yours to sell or eat. He also sent out reminders before the show. He was the ultimate cruise director, taking the lead and hoping that many would follow and enjoy themselves as much as he knew he would. I was so glad he made it back to the Sphere with Nancy Ellen to see the Eagles this year. Every time I saw him thereafter, he had the Eagles Sphere sweatshirt on. When Bobby went off to college in Madison, it was long before cell phones. We did not talk much during the school year. But as soon as we got back over breaks, we were right back to our old shtick. Bobby flourished at Wisconsin. You could tell he was an even better version of himself as he got older. Then came this wonderful female attorney into his life. Nancy Ellen was the perfect fit for Bobby. They complemented each other so well. When Maddie and Jake joined the family, I was so happy for them. Bobby embraced marriage and parenthood and wanted to be the best husband and dad that he could be. It was not always easy, especially after lung cancer showed up 8 years ago, but he never stopped trying to do whatever he could for his family. I love the way that the guy who did not always like new things embraced new challenges, with Nancy Ellen especially vacations. He so enjoyed those adventures, he also wanted to share all 3,000 pictures with you. I want to thank Nancy Ellen for many things, but 3 things in particular. First, for asking me to speak about my best friend today. Second, for bringing Bobby and Maddie to our house for Thanksgiving last month. It turned out to be, but for the hospital, the last time Bobby went out. I will never forget those hours sitting and talking with him. I hope that he appreciated time with me as much as I appreciate my time with him. I had some rough health issues 4 years ago, and being in the hospital for 49 days, I learned what true friendship really is. And I learned not to take for granted that you need to tell the people that you love them. From that time forward, Bobby and I always said, "I love you," when we hung up the phone or we had a visit. He was that person to me. Finally, the last 8 years have been rough for Nancy Ellen, but she has been remarkable and truly lived the spirit of until back to you. Thank you for everything that you did for him. His death is one of the saddest events in my life. I will miss him dearly, and know that his parents are so glad to see him and are taking good care of him. I know that he made them proud, and that everyone will always remember him as a true mensch.
My name's Michael, and I'm a friend of Bob's since meeting him on dorm moving day at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in August of 1980. I'm speaking third today, but the 44 years I knew him might not even put me in the top 5 of Bob's longest-lasting friendships. It's a testament to Bob's profound love and sense of loyalty. Abraham Lincoln said, in the end, it's not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. Aunt Elisa's version was less elegant. She said, you've got to squeeze the juice out of life, which is what Bob did. Bob was a catalyst. Beyond the more common chemical definition of a catalyst is this one that I found. A person whose talk, enthusiasm, or energy causes others to be more friendly or enthusiastic or energetic. Bob might not have been at the center of things, but like a great coach on the sidelines, his ever-present guidance, support, enthusiasm, excitement, and commitment made everything and everyone better. Bob was the most judgmental person I knew in the least judgmental manner imaginable. He looked out into the world and identified what was wrong, while simultaneously and immediately identifying specific plans for remedy. One of the last errands I was able to run was to get Bob the Equate lens cleaner, not the Zeiss, which was more expensive and less effective, as determined through empirical evidence and tested by the Bob meetings. Plus, I had to buy 3 empty mini spray bottles because he had to have them handy in all possible locations, his desk, and couch, and table. And buying the smaller ones was less expensive than, or buying the empty ones was less expensive. Every detail was important and painstakingly considered, but it was rarely just for himself. I dropped a bolt while working on the boat, which Bob deemed problematic. Mysteriously, I soon received a magnetic parts holder, so it wouldn't happen again. He was unhappy that my Dahlquist DQ09 speakers, which he coveted for a time until he bought his own, were in disrepair. So he researched the one and only certified repairman in the United States at Bethlehem, New York, of all places, so I could get them going again. One day Bob was on the boat. He was watching me try to cut a piece of line with a dull knife that I had lying around. A week later, I received a gift package containing a new orange sailing knife and color-coordinated orange knife sharpener. When I asked Bob what I had done to merit a gift, he said, through his enormous and infectious smile, I found the condition of your equipment substandard and therefore unacceptable. Daniel Kahneman, the Israeli Nobel laureate and international authority and researcher on happiness, spoke about the difference between the experiencing self and the remembering self. He said that happiness has a physiological and neurological duration of only 3 seconds. That means that 3 seconds after an event ends, the experience of it and its happiness ends. But the remembering self has the capacity to recall the happiness over and over again. Kahneman noted that what makes the remembering more likely and more powerful is the diversity of the memory. Bob understood and lived that idea. He didn't just take trips or attend concerts. Bob took thousands of pictures of his adventures, documenting every detail. He went to shows and wrote set lists and made spreadsheets and created a collage of every show he'd ever attended for 46 years. Each and every one of those details is a potential path toward happiness. Pick your favorite, minutely detailed memory of Bob and remember the happiness he created for you, then and now. Procol Harum, February 22nd, 2019 at City Winery in Chicago. And Lindsey Buckingham, April 21st, 2022 in North Shore Center in Skokie. Thank you.
sacred ways to experience and to hold on and remember. As we sing the 23rd Psalm, I invite you to let the words wash over you. It is a psalm that is about accompaniment, about not being alone. And I invite you to think about, as we hear Kendra Howard chanting these words, a time that you and Bob spent together, an experience or a memory or some time in which you accompanied each other through some adventure, experience, hardship, or joy in your life.
Israel David, Adonai Roi lo echsar, Mirot desheyer bitzei, Arme menuchot, Yelach alei, Nafshi yishovev, Yalchei v'mag letzedek, Yalchei v'mag letzedek, L'man shemo. Kom kilech v'getz al-movet, lo hira ki ata imadi, shivtecha u'mishantecha, ema yenachomuni. Baruch lefanai, Shulchan neged tzorerai, Nishatam Hashem el Roshi, Kosir vayam. Achtung, chesed, yirdifuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti bebet Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai rohi lo echsar, Adonai rohi lo echsar.
Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. You have me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside restful waters. You restore my soul. You guide me on a path of truth, for such is your name. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table for me in the midst of my adversaries. You drench my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and loving kindness shall be mine all the days of my life, and I shall come to dwell in your house forever. This last week has been so very hard and so very long in many ways, even though the time from when Bob came home from the hospital until his death was way, way too short. But Nancy Ellen and Maddie and Jake, were there with him in the house, being with him, responding to him, loving him, spending time with him, responding to the texts of, can you bring this or do this for me? Taking care of the dogs who were also feeling what was going on. and taking care of each other. So first we'll hear from Maddie, who's going to share some memories and thoughts about your dad, and then Nancy Ellen, who will share your words and your memories with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, thank you all for being here today to honor and remember my father. It's difficult to stand here and put into words the depth of love, admiration, and gratitude I have for him. But I will try my best because my dad deserves that and so much more. Right now, I know he's looking upon me to make sure I have grammatically correct sentences for you. Growing up, with my father, I always knew I was loved. He wasn't the loudest or most expressive man, but his love for his family and friends was as constant and as steady as the sun. His actions spoke louder than words ever could. But what I cherished most about my father was his unwavering belief in me. He always made me feel capable, even when I doubted myself. He never pushed me too hard, since that's always my mom's job. He always encouraged me to be the best version of myself, to follow my passions, and to never give up. That kind of belief in someone changes everything, and it's a gift I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. There are a couple of memories that I would like to share with you all. The first one being when we went to the Dominican Republic on a family trip. I remember my dad was asking me to play a game. That game was whoever can say the loudest bad word in Spanish wins. Spoiler alert, nobody won, because we were laughing too hard to even say it. I don't know where he learned any of these bad words. Just like, you know. Another one being when I had passed my recent RBT exam. He had taken off his oxygen mask at the hospital and yelled, "Woohoo!" Of course he got in trouble with his nurse since he definitely needed that mask on, but I know that he is so proud of me. Lastly, for a couple of years straight, whenever I would say the word "like" in any sentence, he mocked me and called me a valley girl for the longest time. That it later became his ringtone sound for when I called him. I could stand here and talk about his accomplishments and many ways he touched the lives of those around him today, but I think the most important thing to remember is the kind of person he was. He was a man of integrity, a man who valued family, and a man who loved fiercely. He may not have always said it out loud, but I knew and I know that he loved me with all of his heart. That love will never fade, and it will never be forgotten. Dad, I miss you every single day. I miss our conversations, even the quiet ones. I'll miss your advice, even if I didn't always take it. I'll miss your presence, your warmth, and your steady hand guiding me. But most of all, I'll miss the man that you were. Not just as my father, but as a person who showed what it means to live with dignity, kindness, and love. I know you're at peace now, and I will carry your love with me for the rest of my life. You will forever be in my heart. Though your physical presence is gone, your spirit will live in the lessons that you taught me, the love you shared, and the memories we created together. I'll know that you'll always be watching over me, guiding my steps.
I realized when I started to write this that it is so hard to capture the essence of someone in their life without going off on all these tangents. So I hope you will bear with me as I try to describe Bob Lee and our 28 years together. Bob was a mensch. The definition of a mensch is a person of integrity and honor. He was someone that you could count on to always do and say the right thing. Sometimes it drove me crazy. He was the type of person who never said something he did not 100% believe. You could ask him, does this dress make me look fat? And no, he would give you a truly honest answer with a little nuance, of course. I think you should put something else on. He felt things very deeply, but he had trouble expressing his emotions, which often drove those close to him a bit crazy at times. Anyone who read his Karen Bridge post knows this. They were very sort of just the information, no real emotions to it. They were factual almost until the end, not a ton of emotion. He kept his cards very close to the vest. He liked to say it was a boundary thing. He believed that if you wanted him to know something, you should tell him and he would not ask. He was incredibly smart and had a dry wit. He was incredibly hardworking. When I first met him in late 1996, he was working at Carp's for a kosher cookie company and delivering food at night for restaurants way before DoorDash. He
would bring cookies and muffins from work to our dates. He was one of the most discriminating people I ever met. He would do exhaustive research before he ever made a purchase. Even for others, he would do research. He would create Excel spreadsheets for everything, including the grocery list, which listed not just the items, but which aisle they were in Jewel and Target. He had a couple of favorite quotes that he lived by. It is better to have and not need than need and not have. He carried Band-Aids in his wallet and a little pill bottle with aspirin wherever he went. When the kids started driving, he made sure they had snow shovels in their cars in winter, battery chargers, and air compressors for the tires. It was his love language. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for life. He would take copious notes whenever he learned something new, and he expected me and the kids to take notes as well. It would drive me crazy until you needed to do something, and then you had those notes to tell you what to do. Even now, I know that under my bathroom sink, when it gets clogged, there are written instructions in the cabinet explaining what I need to do. We were very different people in so many ways. He was slow to decision making, whereas I am not. He did all this research before making a purchase, before the internet, spending hours going through consumer reports. And when he finally made the purchase, he would tell me how much he spent and make a pissing sound like he was pissing money away. We went to Las Vegas about a year ago for my birthday, and we had been there maybe 15 years before, and we had gone to the Mikimoto store at the time, and I had seen a watch I liked, which he then surprised me for my birthday later that year. So he said, well, maybe the Mikimoto store is still open. So he looked, and we go to the Mikimoto store, and I'm looking around, and I try on these earrings. And I said, how much to the sales clerk? And the sales clerk says, how much? And I was like, I could go to take them off. And he says, we'll take them. And I said, but they're really, really expensive. And he said, I have more money than time. I don't know which is harder to go through a long illness like Bob's, or a very sudden death. One of my very close friends died unexpectedly on Thanksgiving, Linda Ford. And her celebration of life was last Sunday in DC, and I really wanted to go. And before Bob died, we had talked about it, and he said, this is important to you. I think that you should go. So I bought a one-day ticket. And he died on Friday. And so when we were sitting around Friday night waiting for the hospice people to come and call his body, which took forever. Steve was there, and Ann was there, and Maddie was there. And we were downstairs, and I said, I really still want to go. This is very important to me. Bob knew that she was very important to me. And they said, I think you should go. And I said, I don't want to leave my kids. And Jake was okay. I knew he would be okay. But it was Maddie. And she said, well, why don't I go with you? And so we went on Sunday, and I didn't really tell anybody what I was going through because I wanted the day to be about Linda and support her husband. But I think, Steve talked about his timing. I think that his last selfless act for me was to allow me to go to this funeral, because if he had been dying on Sunday, I wouldn't have gone. He really did not want to be defined by his cancer, but it went on for a really long time. And one of the things that I think was really hard for him was that loss of agency. When I told him, you can't drive anymore, and he didn't want to hear it from me. And we were sitting with one of the doctors, and the doctor had to tell him, you can't drive anymore. And he said, well, I don't understand. And he said, well, there's a place out in the suburbs that you can go, and they will give you a driver's test if you still believe that you can drive. But he never asked me again about going out there to try that. In our relationship, we were very, very different. I was the traveler when I first met him. We were in our 30s, and he had never been out of the country. And I took him up. We went to Toronto and Montreal and Quebec, so that he kind of see what it was like to go to Europe. And then he really he caught on to it, and we went to Europe about a year and a half later, and he got to play St. Andrews. That was like his dream, was to go on St. Andrews, and he couldn't believe that the caddy kept, I'm paying all this money, and the caddy keeps saying, go to the next hole, go to the next hole. But one of the pictures outside is him on the 18th hole at St. Andrews. He let me be the ditzy one in our relationship, which for anyone that knows both of us is like, what? But he did. He let me say things like, I don't know how this computer works. Can you just take care of it for me? And he would drive me crazy with I would want him to just do it for me. No, I want you to sit down and take notes so that you learn how to do this for yourself. And that was what he was like. He really, really wanted to die at home. That was so incredibly important to him. And we went through all this stuff in the hospital at the end. And they said, well, he's on so much oxygen, and we could daisy chain these compressors together and everything. So we were able to bring him home. And then he spent those last couple days, taking notes. And I would come home from work, and he's like, not even interacting with me. He's like, well, I have all these things to do. And I was like, no, just spend a little time with me. So, but at the end of the day, he got his wish. His kids were in the house. They got to come down and say goodbye to him. And I got to sit with him. And I want to acknowledge the death doula, Priest Jones, that was with him and I when he passed, and how moving that was to be able to be with him when he took his last breath. And yes, I called Steve and said, it's happened. I'm on my way. And then I texted him 15 minutes later, he's gone. And he looked at my phone. But anyway, so I guess my point being, we made a life together, and he got to do some amazing things after he stopped working because of the cancer. We went to Antarctica and Easter Island and places that he always dreamed of, and he got to go to the Sphere twice to see both U2 and the Eagles. And then our last trip together, which was Albuquerque in October, he got to ride in a hot air balloon. And so he got to do a lot, and we used to joke he was like a weevil. He would wobble and not fall down. But none of us last forever. So I did put what I really love, I hope you prayer on your programs, and I'm just going to read it to you. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints in the snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. And I do believe he's out there. His soul is out there.
So a couple of years ago, during the summer, the rabbi was on sabbatical, and Bob called me and said, I'd like to have lunch with you. We should talk, get to know each other a little bit better.
That was because of me.
Pardon me?
That was because of me.
Really? Oh,
I was like, you have to talk to your crowd.
So he came. He was beautiful. And I knew there was a reason that Bob and I got along well. This is where the similarity ended. Not so much the spreadsheet. In fact, our first lunch, we got together, and of course I know Bob and Nancy Ellen, the long-term members here, and Maddie and Jacob became the spa right here. But we didn't know each other intimately, really well. So we came, and right away we sat down, and Bob got out his legal pad, and he got out his pen, and he had all these things written on it. And I think he wondered that I showed up without a pad. I wasn't taking any notes. But I just wanted to listen and really get to know him. And we did over those last couple of years, having lunch together. The first thing that shocked me about Bob was that he was a rock and roller. I never would have guessed it. And knowing that he was a guy who was so organized and so together, and I thought, well, okay, you did go to the University of Wisconsin, where people are known to let their hair down. But you graduated with honors. So what's the rock and roll connection? And he introduced me, I'm not a rock and roller, but he introduced me to that music, and he knew the history, as all of you know, who know me, he knew the history of different performers and of the genre, and it was fascinating to me. And he was so curious about life, and we talked about the cancer, which he looked straight in the eye, which was quite an inspiration to me, which is why he contacted me in the first place to be prepared when this day came. And he talked about the science of it at first, but eventually our conversations were just about what two guys get together to talk about. We talked about our lives and our children, how much he loved all of you, and his worries and concerns, like mine, with my family, the same thing everyone talks about, and just sort of what was going on at JRC, and he wanted to know, and it was just, it got to be delightful. Not too many people come with that request to get together before the day of their death so that you know them better. It's quite a valuable thing to do. It's not done often. And I realized in the course of it the value that it gave to me. And I will only say that Bob died too soon, 62 years old as a young man. But he lived so much during his years, as was said. And the true gift of his life to me is that you can go out and have adventures and enjoy life before you get the cancer diagnosis, not just when you get a diagnosis of cancer, but to try to, if you're able to live all your life that way. And as was said, the testament of his good friends who spoke here today, he loved loyally and fiercely, lifelong. And what a legacy that is to leave. As I say, he is an inspiration to me, and his memory and the memory of the time that we spent, that Bob and I spent together, will be forever a blessing to me.
Bob wanted so very much for Cantor Howard to be here and to help lead this ritual and to talk about that time because it meant so much to him. There's a song that says, the only measure of our words and our deeds will be the love we leave behind when we're gone. And that love for Bob showed up in a lot of different ways. In ways that all of you who knew him so much better than I did, but through all of your relationships with him, whether they're your memories from childhood, your experiences in your families, your times in high school and in Hebrew school and in college, and then the experience of going out and meeting someone in the world, like at that JCUA event and pool playing afterwards, where Nancy Ellen and Bob and some friends went out and started to build a relationship together. And sometimes that love sounds explicit, and sometimes it sounds like accompanying. Sometimes it is being with you and your friends on the back porch, as Maddie described, doing shots properly, in the right way, at the right time, with the right stuff, even though that was not perhaps the shot of choice. Sometimes it looks like working on cars, or going to Road America, or being able to respond when he said, hey, I need something, and Jake would get it from upstairs and you could text together and be able to connect. Sometimes it looks like having friends bring you things and show up, or being able to go in Maddie's car to Thanksgiving to be able to go out to see and be together one last time. But that act of accompanying each other in our lives is such a sacred thing to do. It doesn't always show up how we want it or how we need it, but it comes up in this way that is so loving. And what is remarkable in your family is that not only was Bob showing up in all of these ways and leaving his love for you, but the love you gave to him. And the way that you took care of him and were with him. Nancy Ellen, 8 years is a very long time to live with a serious diagnosis of not knowing when, through the roller coasters of all of this, to take care of your family and your work, to take care of your husband, which you did beautifully, with dedication, and with struggle. And there is a relief for all of us that Bob, in his pain of his cancer, that suffering for him is over, and that suffering for you is over too. Grief is not something that works in an organized, linear fashion, spreadsheets aside. We cannot mark days on the calendar and say, well, this is how it's going to feel, and this is what it will be, and this is what to do when, because human feelings aren't exactly like that. So instead, we do what we do best, which is to come together and to be together, to open our broken hearts and say they're broken, and we're remembering him, and to pray for the release that his soul becomes, in that beautiful prayer and poem you read, part of the fabric of the rest of the universe, where we can take care of it and remember him and bring and keep alive all of the times we shared with Bob. And also, to be able to carry with us those little tangible reminders and to pay those memories forward in however you're going to carry the part of Bob that you knew and the ways. Grief can be a hard and lonely time, and so the ways that we will all continue to accompany and take care of Nancy Ellen and Maddie and Jake will be important to show up and to be here together, because we know that's something that Bob would have wanted to. So in a few moments, as we end this part of the ritual here, we will take care of his body as we lovingly accompany it to where it will be buried at the cemetery at Shalom Memorial Park in Arlington Heights. But the prayer we do in our tradition, called El Malei Rachamim, it is in translation and in the inside of the program, reminds us that we understand in our Jewish tradition that the body and the soul are two different parts. That sacred moment that you got to spend with him when he exhaled for the last time, to be present for that, you witnessed that the part of Bob that was his essence of him, leaving the physical part. And that while we'll take care of the physical part, we also pray that that ephemeral, invisible part that we feel so deeply, the soul, in Hebrew, the word for soul and the word for breath are the same word, is released and goes to live and become part of the universe and comes to dwell inside our own hearts and our own memories. So I invite you to stand, to rise in body or in spirit, as we chant these words of El Malei Rachamim, as we pray for the release of Bob's soul, that it may come to find peace.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Ba'alomim, Hametzeh Menachalechon Natakat Kanfei Hashchina, B'malot Kedoshim U'Tehorim, Kizohar HaKiyya Mazirim, Et Nishmat, Uven Yaakov Ben Akiva Shmuel, Shehalach Le'olamo, Ono Baruch Rachamim Hastirehu, B'seter Kanfecha Le'olamim, U'tzeror, Yitzror HaChaim Et Nishmato, Adonai, U'nachalato, V'yanach V'shalom, Al Mishkavno, V'namar, Amen.
El Malei Rachamim, God full of compassion, who dwells in the highest realm, grant rest under Shekinah's wings in the place of the holy and pure, illuminated like the brilliance of the skies, the soul of Robert James Lee, son of Carl and Jean, Ruvain Yaakov ben Akiva Shmuel. Merciful One, shelter him under your wings forever and bind his soul among the living, that he may rest in peace in his place. And let us say,
Please be seated.
The rabbi said the interment is going to take place at Shalom Memorial Park. For safety reasons, we're going to ask everybody to please go on your own. We're not going to have a procession other than the immediate family members. We do have maps available outside next to the register book. Also, if you haven't signed the register book, please do so on your way out. This is giving you to the 1700 Rand Road entrance. I would recommend that you don't go in that entrance, rather continue to Wilkie Road. There's a stoplight just past that. Make a right, and then enter the Wilkie Road entrance, and there will be signs that say Lee Service, and you'll just follow the signs to the grave once you enter the Wilkie Road entrance. And then after the interment, the family will be returning to their residence, the Zussman Lee home, 8656 North Central Park Avenue in Skokie, and we'll, the times are on here, but today it'll be from 2:30 to 7:30, Thursday from 6 to 9, and there will be a Shiva Minyan service on Thursday at 7 p.m. At this time, I would like to ask if everybody would please rise, and could I have the pallbearers that were the speakers and the sons please make their way up.
Proceed forward.
For everyone that's writing, it's 12:30 right now. We'll probably, why don't we say 1:15, we'll start the service at the cemetery. It takes about 20-30 minutes, but I want to give people a chance to go to the washroom.